Our environment needs to be managed beyond fence lines, boundaries and catchments to protect its biodiversity and ensure resilience into the future. The Hawkesbury-Nepean Catchment Management Authority is working in partnership with the University of Sydney, Greening Australia and corporate sponsors to care for 1,200 hectares of bushland and 33 kilometres of riverbanks on the Arthursley property as part of a vision to connect major corridors of bushland in the region.
Corridors of bushland are really important, and they can be on a number of different scales. Like you've got the regional corridor, which is that long stretch of vegetation, but you've also got smaller corridors that link between smaller patches of bushland.
We're sitting here in the Great Dividing Range, and where we are right now is a stepping stone from Moreton National Park to the Blue Mountains National Park, so it's a really, really important link right up and down the Great Dividing Range.
This farm was one of the first land grants in New South Wales. In early colonial history was tilled a lot. It grew grain for grain mills in Goulburn that supplied Sydney with flour. Improper tillage practices and mismanagement of grazing led to a lot of degradation, in particular gully erosion.
There's been quite a bit of work done over a long period of time on Arthursley. Even starting back in the mid-70s, there's been a long history of soil conservation works. More recently, we've protected 2 large areas of bushland. They were 600 hectares each. And then connecting those 2 patches of bushland, we've fenced the river corridor. There's been 10.5 kilometres of the Wallandilly River fence. There was 24 kilometres of fencing that was funded to do that. 2 k's of that river has been initially treated for weed control. There will be 3,500 trees that will be planted within that river corridor.
Well, landholders are the key building block in this project. They're the ones that own the land and have the most beautiful biodiversity on the planet sitting in their properties. But it's also they're the ones that know about their land. They know what animals they've got in their property. They know what problems.
The commercial operation that we run here is we run a self-replacing Angus herd and a self-replacing merino sheep flock. We carry around 44,000 DSE when the seasons are running with us. At the present, we're carrying around 1,400 head of cows and we're running 12 to 13,000 sheep.
There's not many properties in the region that are of this size, so it's really good to have a landholder of this scale on board with the Hawkesbury-Nepean CMA. And they're conservation minded, so they want to see the best thing for their property.
This is a very large scale farm. It's 6,300 hectares, and within that we have large areas of remnant bush. If we go out to muster a paddock, we've created boundaries in clear country with just shelter, shade and shelter trees, and it allows us to go out and muster paddocks quickly without them ducking across erosion gullies or running into large areas of bush. So there's been a great labour saving in the way that we've restructured the farm with the new fencing.
There's been 2 large patches of bushland conserved on this property, and they're both 600 hectares each. And there's a number of different species that have been found in these patches of bushland that are highly significant as well. There's been the brush-tailed rock wallaby, which is a threatened species. It's been sighted in this patch of bushland. And also other locally rare species like the koala have also been found here as well.
And our landcare group was doing an exercise of tree identification on the Wallandilly. We were looking at this tree and I said, isn't that a Viminalis? And aren't they koala trees? And that's about all I knew about koalas at that stage. I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we could get some koalas back into this country? So I started doing a bit of research. In 1902, 600,000 koala pelts, that's the hides, were sold in New South Wales, 600,000. Now we're thrilled to have colonies of 100, 150 scattered. And the trouble with scattered colonies is inbreeding. They need to be able to disperse, and that's part of what's good about what the university are doing next door in putting a wildlife corridor along the Wallandilly.
When the climate changes, it means that habitat that was once really, really good for a certain animal might not be so good for them under a different climate. So that means for them to survive, they have to move to a habitat that's better for them. And by having these corridors, it allows much better movement of animals all across the landscape. So it means that if in one particular year they have a drought and their habitat takes a bit of a hit, they can move to the adjoining piece of habitat. So without those corridors, these animals are stuck where they are and have to cope with conditions which are less than perfect for them.
Well, I want to be able to take my granddaughter out and look up a tree and say, there is a koala. But at the moment we can't do that in this area. I think if we can get permission to gradually build up our colony, get the interchange with the colony in Canyon Lee, then maybe 50 years' time we'll have enough koalas tooling around in the area that they'll be back on the horizon.
Without the grants and subsidies that have been available to us, because we've been in the Sydney catchment area, we probably wouldn't have been able to address these issues. This farm was bequeathed to the university to assist animal medical and scientific research, but it can operate at no cost to the university. So we have to be self-sustainable, and it's hard to get surpluses running a commercial agricultural business to be able to address these degradation issues. Certainly, it's the funding that's been available has allowed us to escalate and fast track the improvements that we've needed to make.
The CMA wants to see bushland protected and enhanced. So by fencing and doing weed control and different activities like that, we're protecting the areas predominantly from grazing and from invasive weeds taking over. It's also very important to connect smaller patches of bushland with corridors, and those corridors don't have to be massive corridors like they are here on this property. Each patch of bushland we do links into a bigger picture with the Hawkesbury-Nepean CMA, and it's helping our catchment, but it's also helping Australia as a whole.